Deuteronomy chapter 2, we have the same kind of beginning as chapter 1. You have wandered around this hill country too much. It's time for you to get moving. And then an interesting sequence of events starts to develop. Moses is being encouraged by the Lord to move the people of Israel right up, ready to go into the promised land after all these years. Finally, they're going to start. And so they have to move into position. And now, there's a spiritual principle, a principle of, you might say, of spiritual warfare that comes out in this. So we're still thinking back with Moses of the way that God has led Israel. But now, here comes the twist. With the command to move on and move in and move up, God is saying, the way you understand the past is the way that you will work with me in the future. Okay, but then he gives an interesting set of instructions. He says, you're going to be going among people who you are distantly related to. And in verse 4 and verse 9 and verse 19, he talks about these, the ites, the Ammonites and the Edomites, and people who are related to Lot and Esau way back in Israel's history. And he says, when you go through their land, don't bother with them. Tread carefully. Move around the edges of them. Don't engage. Don't confront. So, what's the principle? I think that it's simply that you must choose your battles. That you choose the things that you have to confront in situations. And you don't have to fight every battle. It's a warfare strategy that's worth learning. Just tread carefully. Just go round the edges. You don't always need to confront people. What do you think? Think about it. One time, Jesus wasn't received at a village, the Samaritan village, and the disciples said to him, Master, shall we call down fire from on heaven? Shall we bomb them to bits, Lord? And he said, no, we'll just go to another village. And Jesus said to them, when they don't receive you in one place, go to another place. In fact, he's saying, don't confront every situation, Jonah style. You will be condemned. You have refused me. You will die. He said, just go round. Tread carefully. Pick your moments. That's, well, what battles? What battles do I pick? What's the point of this? Well, the first point is that they were simply doing what God told them to do. So, enough said. When I was a small child, I used to just do what my father told me to do, because I probably wrongly assumed that he knew everything and he knew what was best for me. So I just trusted his wisdom, trusted his judgment. As I got older, I began to negotiate with him. Well, are you sure? Is that your opinion? Well, I respect your opinion, Dad, but I'm going to do this. And so that's how childhood develops into adulthood. And there's a wonderful kind of combination of this between Moses and God. He's allowing Moses some negotiation. You'll see it later, big time, in chapter 2. But the first point is he's telling them to do something, and so they do it. But why did he say? I believe that God wanted them to use old connections to get themselves into a more favourable position. Make use of unrighteous mammon, Jesus said on one point. He said these things are unrighteous, it's part of the world, but make use of unrighteous mammon to build yourself an eternal habitation. Isn't that an interesting concept? Just don't confront every situation. Use it for my good. Get yourself in a favourable position to fight the battles that matter. And even things that it seems that you need to confront them could be used to your advantage. And this is the way that Paul acted in church planting. He would go in characteristically into the synagogue and speak to people who he flatly, completely, utterly disagreed with their theology, disagreed with their take on God, but he used that position to proclaim the message of Christ. He didn't confront them. He had said that Christ is the end of the law, so there was plenty to confront in the synagogues. But Jesus gives us this principle, go on, go round, go to the next place. Okay, and God said here, they have their territory and I will not give it to you. Isn't that interesting? The Ammonites and the Edomites and the others, they have their allotment, I will not give it to you. But that's not the whole story. Israel had to be ready to fight. God was going to go in ahead and prepare the fight and soften up the opponents. It's a bit like I said the other day, like having Muhammad Ali to go into the boxing ring ahead of you to soften up the opposition. And all you have to go in to do is to walk up to this punch-drunk, broken up assailant and give him a poke so he falls over. And that's how it developed with Israel here. And how did he do that? How did God fight the opponents of Israel? Here's a wonderful verse from the end of that chapter. He said he did it through media coverage. I often think that media is a wicked thing, and it's so polluted, so bad in our world, and I feel so cynical about media coverage. But God used media coverage to fight Israel's battle. You look down there at 24 and 25. He said, this very day, begin to take possession, engage in battle. This very day, I will begin to put the terror and fear of you on all the nations under heaven. They will hear reports of you and will tremble and be in anguish because of you. The media coverage, it's like a version of favour. The favour of God will go ahead of you and they will tremble when they hear you coming. Aren't you glad you're on the Lord's side? Aren't you glad that we're fighting a battle that he really undertakes on our behalf? The blessing goes with you. God bless you today. Amen.